Giselle Pélicot. She met her twin flame at 18 years old, and a couple years later, the two were married, but due to feelings of unhappiness in the relationship, they both went on to have multiple affairs during the course of the marriage. Those affairs, though, were secret in the community because these two were actually seen as an ideal couple. A lot of people wanted to be like them. A lot of other couples who had been divorced envied them. Many thought they were the perfect couple. They both enjoyed the fame and the attention they were getting from their inner circle about the quality of their relationship. You see, they're both Sagittarius sun, Aries rising, and Leo at the Pluto. We'll talk some more about that later. The attention they were getting from the community put them on the pedestal, but you see, that was not enough for this gentleman right here, Dominique Pélicot, her husband. He wanted more fame. He had no real skills, no real talent, no real uniqueness to be able to create that fame for himself. So he decided to use her body against her will to make himself famous. This week, her now 71-year-old husband admitted in a court of law that he raped his wife, drugged her, and invited several other men to grape her. Giselle has since divorced her husband of 50 years and admitted to feeling deeply betrayed by the father of her now 3 adult children. It's important for you to know that while the grapes were going on, she was unconscious, laying in their bed, completely drugged. However, there were symptoms. So she started feeling these symptoms in her body, and numerous times she'll go to the doctors to seek help, and every time her husband would be accompanying her. And when she would describe her symptoms, he would interject and tell the doctor that she's just stressed, she's tired, and she needs to relax. So they ended up putting her on anti-anxiety medication. And it was that same medication that he used to continue to drug her by adding it to the food that she was consuming, which would then cause her to pass out. You see, Giselle was not as happy in the marriage as he was, and clearly he wasn't happy either, but didn't want to admit to it. They both were lying to each other about how happy they really were being there. He had asked her for an open relationship. Giselle did not want to have a non-monogamous relationship. She was not interested in threesomes or anything more to do with them sexually than what they're currently doing. And he asked for some other sexual exploration in the bedroom that involved her rear end. And she was not interested in that type of exploration. So he decided that he was going to take it. You see, when the perpetrators would come to his home to grape his wife, Pélicot would demand that they not wear a condom. As a result, Giselle ended up with several sexually transmitted diseases. He did this purely for the enjoyment of it all. No money was exchanged. This was not about him getting paid. This is something that he just simply got a lot of pleasure out of, and something he was hoping to continue to keep secret and to keep enjoying privately. This is them relaxing at home. In court, he admitted, I quote, "My wife and I had discussions about swinging, but she didn't agree, so I drugged her." Pélicot said that he loved his wife, but he sees her as an object to satisfy his sexual and narcissistic needs. Pélicot is said to have also had homosexual relations with some of the other men accused of raping his wife. Remember, many narcissists use their sexuality as a weapon to get their needs met. For many of them, sexuality is a tool to gain more validation, more power. Think of P. Diddy. So what actual evidence did they have against him? Let's get into that. It all started in 2010 when Pélicot was caught recording women up their skirts. As a result of that crime, he was charged 100 euros to be acquitted. He paid the amount, and he never told his wife about this. So she didn't actually find out about this until this crime. It seemed the supermarket is where Pélicot enjoyed doing this. Fast forward to 2020, he was arrested again for doing the same thing. He would go to the supermarket, he would get his phone out, and he would record women up their skirts. When officers arrested him and interviewed him, he admitted that he'd done it, but he said he'd never done it before. This was his first time ever doing it. And he told officers the only reason he's doing it is because his wife has been out of town for a month. So he's feeling sexually frustrated, and his frustration overwhelmed him, and that's what caused him to commit this crime. Upon investigating his cell phone and his computer, the police found much more than they bargained for. They've actually found 4 very damning pieces of information that are irrefutable. Let's go over them. Exhibit A, in this chat room called à son insu, which translated in English means without her knowledge or without her consent, these chat members will discuss sexual acts that they're performing on their partners without their partner's consent. That was the whole purpose of the chat, and they would discuss doing so after drugging their partner. In this chat, he invited other members to come grape his wife and watch footage of his wife being raped either by him or other men. Exhibit B, he had a folder. You see, he was very strategic and organized with how he did this. A lot of abusers are very calculated. This is what I need you guys to understand. Abuse is not something that happens haphazardly. There is a machine, there's a mechanic to it. And a lot of abusers test this mechanic to figure out the perfect system to execute their plan. He created a folder on his computer called abus, which meaning in English is abuse. So the name of the folder already says that he knows what he's doing. Police found 200,000 images and videos of the grapes. This folder was labeled so perfectly that investigators identified 92 grapes committed against Giselle, his wife. These grapes were done by 72 different men, out of which police were only able to identify and locate 50 of them who were being charged right along with Dominique Pélicot. All 50 men are facing trial in French court. Exhibit C. These are the Pélicot children that went on to have 2 boys and a girl. Police also found pictures of his daughter, represented here in the middle, in the nude, lying lifeless on a bed, right, with her mother's underwear on her that he put on her. And police found evidence of him trading these photos in this group chat with strangers. In addition, police found videos of the wives of his sons. Do you see his 2 sons there? They're both married, and there's some grandchildren involved. He recorded the wives of his 2 sons taking showers without their consent, and he had video footage of that he was also trading online. Needless to say, these girls, his daughter and his daughter-in-law, did not consent to their pictures being taken or the video being taken, in a nude and distributed online. Exhibit D, Pélicot also trained another man called Jean-Pierre Maréchal, and he trained him to perpetrate the same crime that he was committed against his own wife. So basically, he was trying to clone himself into Jean-Pierre. From 2015 to 2020, Jean-Pierre would give his wife to Pélicot, who would grape her and record it, of course. Dominique showed Jean-Pierre all of the tools and tricks that he utilized to violate his wife for 10 years without her ever knowing about it. Pélicot and Maréchal are both also accused of graping Maréchal's wife up to 10 times, and police have evidence of this. Follow for part 2 of my video on the Pélicot. Dominique and Giselle were married for 50 years when it was found out that Dominique had been drugging, raping his wife, and inviting other men to do the same while he recorded the information and shared it online. He was arrested for his crime and currently going through trial. Let's go over what his defense was in court. Dominique stated, quote, "One is not born a pervert, one becomes a pervert." Let me explain. So Dominique argued that yes, he did grape his wife, and yes, he did do all these things. However, he's not fully responsible for them because of what happened to him when he was a child. He argued in front of a judge that when he was 9 years old and had gone to the hospital to seek care, one of the male nurses had sexually assaulted him. His mother has since investigated that facility around the time that he was at the hospital and they found out there were no male nurses on staff during that time. Dominique also argued that when he was 14, he was forced into a gang rape situation, and that created the blueprint for this behavior. Additionally, he talked about growing up in a very traumatic household with a father that was very abusive. He claims that there was a child that his family had adopted that his father sexually violated over a long period of time. And he also reported that his father was violent towards his mother. So basically saying there is a history of sexual assault in the home as well as domestic violence. He also added that his mother's lack of protection and support was at the root of the issue, because at 14 he begged his mother to finally leave his father as his father was abusive towards his mother. And he said his mother refused and she stayed in the marriage. And from his point of view, that is why he is the way that he is. Welcome to part 3 of my astrology love reading between Giselle Pélicot and her husband Dominique. This is a French rape trial case. Getting out of the frame so you can see everything more clearly, this is the list of the main placements for both Giselle and her husband, now ex-husband, Dominique Pélicot. As you can see, these two are literal twin flames that have the same exact placements. They both have Sagittarius Sun, Aries Moon, Sagittarius Mercury, Capricorn Venus, Mars in Aquarius, Jupiter in Taurus, Saturn in Libra, Uranus in Cancer, which is what they were here to work on, Neptune in Libra, Pluto in Leo. They both have their North Node in Aquarius, another thing they were here to work on, their Lilith in Leo, and their Chiron in Capricorn. You can see their vertex and fortune is also here in Aries. So these two are literally the same soul split into two bodies, even though they have very different birthdays. So what that means is that they have the same 12th house placement. When understanding your karma in a love relationship, you want to start with the 12th house. People who have their 12th house in Pisces are people who struggle with feeling connected to humanity. These are people who often struggle with feeling isolated, so they escape reality via substance abuse, usually drugs, alcohol, a lot of sex, just any kind of dopamine-driven activities that allow them to avoid deep-seated emotional wounds. And unfortunately for them, not addressing those emotional wounds has a tendency to create additional issues in their lives. So this can show up in different ways, such as being codependent in a relationship that is toxic, not being able to heal themselves from drugs or alcohol. They can struggle to have genuine friendships and other genuine connections because at the root of it, they feel incredibly pained by their human experience. They feel unloved, and that lack of love is reflected in their worth as a human being. So they tend to struggle a lot with shame, fears, insecurity, and a lot of low self-esteem. So for many of them, getting them to acknowledge that is a struggle, because Aries rising is not the most emotionally secure individual. So the typical way that Aries rising is going to deal with this is by avoiding and by escaping. As you can see in the case of the Pélicot, this is what they did. And escapism, unfortunately, is just a temporary way to forget about our problems, but it doesn't actually erase our problems. It just typically makes them worse, because a temporary band-aid doesn't actually heal the wounds. It doesn't even begin to address the discomfort, the pain, the baggage, the stench of it all. So the 12th house in Pisces is somebody that really needs to work on connecting with their intuition, connecting with their dreams, connecting with their subconscious mind. It's someone that really needs to do a lot of healing around love, the feeling of love, and a lot of healing around spirituality, because those people also struggle to believe in something higher than themselves. They struggle to utilize this very powerful spiritual tool that they have for their own healing and their personal growth. It's almost like they have a bit of imposter syndrome with believing in their own divinity. But if they're brave enough to go on the healing journey, Pisces 12th house can be an incredibly powerful spiritual placement, because they're allowed to see the unseen, and they can use that spirituality to tap into deeper wisdom, deeper guidance, because as you know, Pisces rules the underworld. So it can be a rich source of information for their own emotional and spiritual depth. Emotional development and spiritual awareness can help them unlock new levels of creativity, inspiration, guidance as they challenge their unconscious patterns and their unconscious behaviors and identify areas where they feel stuck and confront the emotional wounds that are there by learning to trust their intuition, trust their power, trust their liberation, trust their empowerment. This placement is deeply powerful because it allows you to really break free from patterns that you and your ancestors have been struggling with, that has been holding you back from your real progress. And there's a lot of change and magic and a profound sense of release and transformation and surrendering that can happen when a person is willing to go that deep within to investigate themselves. Pisces 12th house people come from a legacy of not feeling loved and not being loved. And clearly, the Pélicot decided to continue this karma in this life as opposed to healing that so they could evolve. The second place you want to go when you're exploring your karmic history with a lover is looking at Saturn. Again, if you have the same Saturn and Venus as somebody, that is a red flag. Saturn in astrology is the planet of karma. Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Capricorn is all about discipline. So wherever you have Saturn is where you need to be the most disciplined so you can accomplish your manifestation, so you can accomplish your dreams, so you can live your most balanced life. Both these individuals have Saturn in Libra, and they both have Libra in their seventh house, which is the house of marriage in astrology. Libra represents justice, balance, harmony. Of course, it was written in the stars that these two would be headed for court at some point. But if they had played the game well, it would have been for divorce, not for what they're actually going through at this time. Aries is, in fact, the very first leader of the zodiac. When a leader who was manufactured by God to lead refuses to lead, what happens is it creates other problems because a leader fundamentally has to be responsible for themselves, have a vision, and guide everybody else along that path. This aspect of Saturn square Venus is what many astrologers refer to as the Gordian knot, because it's almost like the house is on fire. Nobody knows how to get out, and nobody knows how to find the solution. It's like nobody can find the door, even though it's not working. So every time they're trying to get out, they get deeper into the mud and they don't know how to get unstuck. Another aspect that works against them is that their Saturn is square their Uranus. Uranus is a ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is how we gain more intelligence and insight and spiritual awareness. Uranus is all about progress, enlightenment. So when you have a Saturn square Uranus, there's this tension here because Saturn is very traditional, which is anti-progress, because Saturn wants you to do the same thing a million times. And Aquarius wants you to learn from the past and do better. Meanwhile, since these two are the same soul in two bodies, instead of evolving, what they're doing is reflecting each other's negativity to each other. So they're both conservative, but obviously the way they're living is quite progressive because they want to have affairs and do all this kind of other weird sexual stuff, but they don't want to lose the respect of the community for indulging. So what's happening here is that we're creating a false reality. This deception and kind of push-pull energy creates a lot of tension in the relationship that manifests as anger, irritability, and impatience, and just feeling like you're alone in a relationship. Now, finishing off with Pluto. Pluto is the very last place you will go to understand karma between you and your lover, and Pluto is how God destroys our lives when we're not balanced. They both have Pluto and Leo. So they became famous, but not for the reasons that they wanted to be famous. His Saturn sextiles her Pluto at 0 degree, and his Pluto sextiles her Saturn at 1 degree. In astrology, if you want to understand the spiritual maturity of a person in that energy, you look at the degree. 0 to 1 degree is very inexperienced. It didn't have the maturity to make the necessary changes because their destiny is written in the star. They were bound to be famous, but obviously not for a good reason in this case. Despite admitting his guilt and referring to himself as a rapist during his trial, Dominique stated that he did not believe he did anything wrong and even claimed that he saved his wife from suffering by drugging her before the sexual assault occurred. If you needed one last tidbit of evidence that this man is a narcissist, there you have it. So, what other astrological observations did you make from looking at their chart? And what do you think is the moral of the story? Enjoy this content? Follow us on YouTube at Intuitive Healing, at Styled Under, and at Astrology Weekly. You can also join a manifestation group on Patreon at Intuitive Healing. Link in bio for all those resources. Thanks for watching.